What's going on, everyone? I think it's time to talk about comedy. I think it's time to talk about the haha funnies, okay? And I think no better place to start would be to do a little checkup on Dave Chappelle. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know that much about Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle doesn't mean anything to me. I know there's been a lot of discourse around this man for a little while, but I've never watched any of his shows. I've never watched any of his performances. I don't even think I've heard Dave Chappelle speak for more than 2 minutes in a row. So that's just me to let you know where I come from here. So I never cared that much about Dave Chappelle, and I still don't. But what I do know is what I've read from what he said about himself and what other people have said about him. And I gotta say, he seems a little strange, at least as of late. And I gotta say, no matter what you think about him, it's hard to not call what this is absolutely embarrassing. So we haven't talked about it on the channel before, but what happened is that Dave Chappelle had a special. It was a Netflix special where he touched on trans people. Wild, I know, right? What, near 50-year-old man goes on stage to talk about trans people in cancel culture? How great. Listen, I never really watched comedy that much, but I gotta tell you, I think this is the worst possible time to jump in at this moment, because every other comedian has an I'm being canceled special where they're being paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to perform and talk about how brave they are to perform in front of an audience who paid a lot of money to sit in front of them, to each their own. And during that special, he made a couple of we would say spicy jokes, some jokes that people didn't take too well. He put forward a couple of ideas through jokes that people found a bit distasteful, and I have to tell you, they're mostly right. I think a lot of it comes from a sheer misunderstanding of a lot of these issues regarding trans people, gender, the struggle that's going on between trans rights and some like women's groups, TERFs especially. That's been a really big thing, and it's fine to want to talk about it. That's not a problem at all. The problem comes when you have strong opinions about something but very little understanding of it. And so it wasn't just some wacky lefties who thought this. It's the students in his old school as well. So Dave Chappelle was doing a little tour. He was bouncing around. He wanted to go to his alma mater at his old high school. But my man got a not so welcome homecoming. Let's read a little bit about it. Dave Chappelle made a surprise stop at DC's Duke Ellington School of Arts on Tuesday as the latest chapter of the running saga with his alma mater. But if the self-proclaimed GOAT hoped to smooth things over amid the backlash over his jokes about transgender people, he was in for a surprise of his own. So I do wonder what the point of this was, right? Because he got a decent amount of flack for a lot of the things that he said. He went on stage, he said he was like Team TERF, which is basically the equivalent of being in the 1960s and saying that you're Team KKK. But whatever. I guess other minorities' problems don't matter that much to us. That's all right. Some 580 students packed into an auditorium to hear their school's most famous alum discuss the uproar triggered by his Netflix special, The Closer. With a camera crew in tow, Chappelle took to stage to a raucous reception of cheers and some booze, and the hour-long session went south from there, we're told. Okay. I just think this is weird as hell already, to be a multi-millionaire who's been in the spotlight for the better part of a decade, if not a decade. I don't know how long he's been doing comedy. I have no clue, but he's been around for a very long time. To go to your old school and then plead your case that you're actually funny and you're not cringe to a bunch of high schoolers is definitely something that you can do, I guess. During a Q&A session, one student stepped up to the mic and called Chappelle a bigot, adding, "I'm 16 and I think you're childish. You handled it like a child." Wait, who is this kid? They're boss as fuck. Wait, that's so Sigma. Now that's a Sigma move. I'm 16 and I think you're childish. That's saying something right there. Oof, ow, and ouch. Couldn't possibly be me, because the way that he handled it was pretty goofy. It's the same thing that a lot of people who complain about, cancel culture and the alphabet people and or the blacks or whatever, progressive people get mad. Oh, I've made a really insensitive joke and you don't like it. I'm being canceled. Let me go to my multi-million-dollar stand-up set and let me go on the next 10 public interviews on the top-rated TV shows and talk about how silenced I'm being and how everyone hates me for my epic truth-telling or whatever. And when all of this came down, I mean, there were people who obviously criticized a lot of the things that he said, and we can talk about that in a moment. But when you come out and you're like, if this is what being canceled is like, I love it. You know what? It kind of just reinforces the fact that cancel culture just isn't real. It's not real. What cancel culture really is people who are in power getting really mad that not everybody loves them. That's basically it. Or when they reap the consequences of their actions, honestly. Because be honest, when do people say that someone's being canceled? When they say something really shitty, when they do something really shitty, typically when they double, triple, and quadruple down on it, they're like awful bad take, and then people just disagree with them. At the end of the day, instead of being like, oh, okay, this is like valid criticism, or even sometimes if it's not necessarily the most valid criticism, you can understand that maybe there is some things to take away from there. Instead of doing that, you just say, instead of doing that and realizing that you could be wrong, even the slightest amount, you just complain that everybody hates you and they should be laughing. And so this is why I go to my old high school and tell a bunch of kids why they should be laughing. Chappelle responded as recalled the next day by the students. My friend, with all due respect, I don't believe you could make the decisions I have to make on a given day. I don't know what this has to do with your positions about trans people, but okay. It seems like a massive deflection. Yeah, bro. I mean, I'm pretty sure like a 16-year-old can't make literally every decision from a business standpoint as a like near 50-year-old man. But with that being said, I think this kid seems to have a good enough head on their shoulders to realize that someone's being a little goofy. You know, someone's being a little childish, all right? They're 16. They know children. They are children. They know how they act. And if you're acting like one, all right, it takes one to know one. So I feel like they'd be the biggest expert on this personally. In response to the antagonistic question, Chappelle roughly told the students, and this is where the saddest, goofiest shit happens. Chappelle roughly told the student body of artists, I'm better than you. I'm better than every instrumentalist, artist, no matter what art you do in this school right now, I'm better than you. I'm sure that will change, and I'm sure you'll be household name soon. What the fuck is this? Some of the jokes that you're told were really insensitive and pretty mean. I don't think that you should be doing that anymore. And honestly, this shows that you may be holding some bigoted views. I'm better than you. I'm the better artist. No matter who is in here, no matter what you do, I'm going to always be better than you. Until I guess I'm not. What the fuck is it? Dave Chappelle having a normal one, very normal response to people who don't like what you're doing. Very cool. And the thing is, that may not even be true. That may not even be necessarily true. It depends on what you mean by better. I know lots of people enjoy Dave Chappelle's stand-up. I don't know how you rate like stand-up, instrumentalist, and media artist together on like who's better in their like respective field. I don't know how that would work, but I would imagine there's some incredibly talented artists in there in the student body group. It is like a school for the arts. So that massive assumption in and of itself shows a decent amount of hubris that just because you're successful does not mean that you're the best at what you do and better than literally everyone else. That's not how that works. Making money does not mean that you're better than everyone else. If it did, I have some very bad news for some poor, really good people and some very rich, very bad people. I mean, just look at Epstein. Well, I mean, I guess he was better than everyone else at child sex trafficking, but I'm not sure if we want to give a medal for that. The students recalled that another student in the audience shouted at him, "Your comedy kills!" And Chappelle shot back, "N-words are killed every day." Then he asked, the media isn't here, right? Well, the media was there. The media was indeed there, actually. You know what's really weird is that they forced the kids to put their phones away in like a little lockbox so nobody can record this. Apparently he didn't want things to go down on the record for some of the shit that he said there. That's just like super curious, huh? So not only screeching the N-word at a group of children, not understanding what this means. Your comedy kills. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about this. I don't think actually, you know what? I'm going full in. I'm 100% sure everybody who's really against this quote necessarily is not thinking. You don't understand what this kid was trying to say, which is funny because they're trying to clown on these kids for, you know, being kids, but it seems like some of these guys have a better grasp on, at the very least, the English language than a lot of people who say that they're cringe. I'm very sure that this kid does not believe that every time Dave Chappelle tells a joke, it's like the fucking Death Note, someone just instantly fucking dies, they just keel over dead. That's not what this means. Obviously what this means is that his memes perpetuate feelings and thoughts, prejudices, and institutional stigmatization against people that will lead to some people dying. And that's true. When you like start conflating, which goes a lot of his misunderstanding, start conflating gender and sex and throwing these words around like they're the same exact thing, and saying, oh, like I believe sex is real. Literally nobody disagrees with that at all. But trying to frame your like opponents on this particular subject as like being that insane, and that helps perpetuate a lot of systems that get trans people killed, that gets a lot of trans kids thrown out on the street and abandoned by their family. Hate crimes that get perpetuated by these feelings that trans people are trying to like either destroy women or destroy the idea of like women or gender or something, or just like general hatred that really stems from homophobia. And Dave Chappelle's complete lack of understanding that, still not understanding that trans people can also be black. Not all trans people are white. This is true. They are not all white. And completely misunderstanding that intersectionality exists. Like you can be white and you don't have prejudices against you because you're white, but also be gay and have people hate you for you being gay. It's wild, isn't it? It's wild that our world is literally more than one dimension. Who could have seen this coming? Apparently not Chappelle. The two students we spoke to declined to go on the record out of fear of retribution from the school. The father of one of the students, who declined to speak publicly to protect his identity of his daughter, said, as a parent, I have to say I have a real problem. He was being dead serious and using the N-word on the record. What kind of judgment is the school showing to allow that? I do have to say, having some guy come in and like yell slurs at a group of 600 high schoolers isn't necessarily the best judgment call by the school. I have to tell you that he talked and said the N-word. If anything, Dave is putting the school on the map. Chappelle has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for the Duke Ellington and brought in A-list celebrities such as Bradley Cooper and Chris Tucker. I have no clue who the fuck these people are, but if they're famous, okay. I don't think that this shit reads exactly like I'm paying you an exposure. Hey, listen. Hey, ye may have came here and started like using the N-word in front of literal children, but have you thought about how there's no such thing as bad press? You could use this to literally justify anything. Dave Chappelle could have like pulled down his pants and started shitting on the floor and dragging his ass across the ground like a dog, using his shit as a magic marker to make little doodles on the stage, and this would still be able to apply. Listen, he's putting the school on the map. It's called a bit. Ever heard of a bit? The school students we spoke to were afraid to speak up at the assembly because Chappelle often laughed at students' questions or responded with jokes. At one point, after a student left the assembly room, Chappelle singled her out by saying, "Of course she left early." What the fuck is like, what? Like, imagine going to a school just to like bully some kids, especially if they have some like of course they left. Why wouldn't you leave? He doesn't give a shit about any of this. He doesn't take any of this seriously. Why the fuck would you stay there? What's the point of talking to him? What's the point of being there? If he doesn't take any of this seriously, just cracks jokes and laughs at everybody and not giving like not giving a real answer. He hasn't given a real answer once here. Not once. Not one time. You're childish. I make big decisions. Your comedy perpetuates stigmatism that can kill people. People die every day. Like, these aren't actual responses. He doesn't care about any of this. He does not care about their opinion. And so obviously, why would you stay there? Tim said the person can't even entertain the idea of a conversation. This is not a conversation. If you ask a question and then the person makes armpit fart noises, listen, I've talked to some people before, okay? I may be a streamer. I may be like cooped up in my room 24/7, all right, but I remember having conversations with people in the real world, and that's not a conversation. It's not. It was a huge power imbalance. of this grown man and his camera crew and these 14 to 18-year-olds without their phones, just high school kids. Yeah, and here's another like really big thing. And you hear they're like they had to put their phones in special pouches to protect Dave Chappelle from being recorded by them. So if they don't want anything to go over in his like special, they can just quickly edit that out, and there'd be no record of it until Politico came around. So we love Politico. They do good work. Thank you, Politico. Great reporting as always. This is the same thing that you see when it comes to like Ben Shapiro or like Steven Crowder. A lot of these types of people who do these sorts of talks or whatever, these like conversations. These are unbalanced conversations. For one, he has a massive power imbalance simply for being Dave Chappelle. Massive media figure, and he has his camera crew there. He basically runs the entire event. That also, he more likely than not is the one with the microphone and controls the microphone, and the school there caters to him. Like, this isn't, and you may even have like a hostile crowd of your like fellow classmates, and even if it's not 100% hostile, I would say at the very least it's 50% hostile. Like, this is not a space where actual conversations can happen. Everybody who believes that is dumb as fuck. This is not how actual conversations happen at all, and that's why he was able to control the entire direction of how this went. And so even then, I think the kids did a pretty good job, honestly, to throw out some of their questions, to get up there and contradict the man who says he cannot be contradicted. I think it's great work. Good on them. That's some real bravery right there. I respect it. About 8 students came forward to ask questions. During the conversation with students and staff, Chappelle specifically invited the voices of discontent to ask questions. However, as a result, the supporters of Chappelle became the silent majority. And so he was like, hey, come on, ask questions. I bet there are definitely more people in there who would want to ask more questions. But after his responses to like the first 3 kids who asked questions, obviously, I mean, even if I was there, I probably wouldn't want to talk. I wouldn't want to talk to him either. Like, let's be completely honest. He's not there. He doesn't care about your opinion. He doesn't care. He's not taking it seriously. There's no reason to go up there and speak. Sims said Chappelle was expecting forgiveness from students, not to offer an apology of his own. The school postponed an event to name its theater after him amid concerns that students' reactions to his special. And obviously there were some people who were in the crowd who supported him as well. But I just want to talk about this for like a quick second, okay? When it comes to this and when it comes to jokes, there's been a lot of discussion around it, and I think most of it has been dumb as hell. You'll see a lot of people on the right say one thing and one thing specifically. It's just a joke. That's just a joke. It's a joke. As in, that's not supposed to be taken seriously. Now, and I don't really watch comedy specials or anything, but I know comedians and I respect them. They seem like pretty decent people generally. They talk all the time about how their history is like the jester telling the truth that nobody else was willing to tell in a form that could get them killed, and they go underground and they reveal the dark truths of our society that nobody else wants to speak on and nobody wants to touch on, and we comedians hold the big mirror up against ourselves so we can finally see what we've become, and like all stuff like that. And I think a lot of that is super true. That's why comedy is a really important thing and why comedy should be respected. Now, I don't think the right respects comedy that much, because they'll say all of that. They'll say that these comedians are huge truth tellers. They say that everything that they say is something that they believe, even if it's hyperbolized a little bit. The main thing is that there is a point, right? Like, these jokes are connected to reality. There's a point, unless the joke is just being absurd. More likely than not, the comedian believes something of the joke that they're telling, right? And they'll say as much when they talk about these jokes. Once they start to get criticism for it, once people start to push back, once people start to dislike or even disagree with the joke, or even at the very least think it's not funny, these people come like screeching out of the woodwork. These people come fucking running from the shadows, sprinting, flap, 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 like there's no shoes on, okay? Just running to come yell at you about how it's just a joke. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Stop taking it so seriously. It's just a joke, man. It's just a meme. It's just a funny haha. And I've never understood that at all. I've never gotten it, because these two things run completely contrary. It's either a serious way to convey an idea about the world that we live in, and they're a truth teller, or it's a joke and it's not serious. It's not supposed to be taken either literally, or even necessarily figuratively. It's just a funny, silly thing that doesn't mean anything to you or the world. I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Because at the end of the day, what it really is they want to be able to say stuff but not get criticized for it. That's it. You have to laugh. You have to think it's funny. You have to not disagree with this joke. You have to not think that I'm a bad comedian, because if you do, you're canceling me. You don't understand that it's just a joke. You hate comedy, all this and that stuff. And it's effective rhetorically, but it makes no sense once you spend any length of time thinking about it. And a lot of people brought up how a special was supposed to be like telling these trans and queer people to be able to like laugh at themselves. That's fine. I think a lot of trans people laugh at themselves. I mean, the situation that they're in can be just humorous in and of itself, right? But the way in which you tell people to laugh about themselves and who's telling it, who says that, means a lot. Okay, I'm pretty sure if like David Duke or something, Richard Spencer came out and said that Jews need to be able to learn to laugh about themselves, I'm not sure if you would necessarily take that as like, oh yeah, man, this is super sick. Not saying that he's literally like he's David Duke or Richard Spencer levels, but you understand what I'm saying, especially when he showed like he doesn't understand the vast majority of these topics to the extent in which that I think it would be responsible for him to talk about in any public forum, period. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think a lot of these big comedians can be great forces for good, and thankfully there are a lot of comedians out there who aren't as bad at this. But I think Chappelle should honestly take his own advice. From the few things that I've heard from Chappelle, I remember him talking about the reason why he quit his Chappelle show, or the Chappelle show, not sure which one is correct, where he was telling jokes, but people weren't laughing for the right reasons. And so he felt bad because the way that those jokes were being taken, the way that people were understanding them, doesn't coincide with his values as a comedian. I think that's a really cool and noble thing. I just wish that he would extend that same belief to other groups of people and other minorities. I think like as Black people, we have not an ability, but an obligation to help hold up and help other minority groups. Like, we as Black people should know more than anybody else what happens when society doesn't care about a minority group. I mean, we've been knowing about it for the last over 250 years. And so that, I think that makes it even more sad when people do stuff like this, when people try and kick another minority group under the rug, whether they're doing it intentionally or unintentionally. The effect is still the same, and you need to own up to that. He doesn't care about it much. And I mean, that's his prerogative. I mean, he's rich enough not to care at all. It's just unfortunate that a lot of the people who will be hurt by his comedy won't be so lucky as to be able to escape the trouble that comes from the rhetoric that he espouses, right? Because when he was up on stage and he's like, sex is real, and then everyone said, woo, woo, like when that happened, that's when anybody who's like knowledgeable in these certain topics, that's when you would know that you're in a group of people who aren't laughing at these jokes about trans people, especially when you compare like being trans to wearing blackface. That's what we call a yikes. That's when anybody who would be educating these topics would know that you're not in a group of people who are laughing at these jokes about trans people because, oh, they're cute and it's funny, and it's satirical. They're laughing at it because they hold some poor views about trans people. And anybody who disagrees with that, please, hey, listen, I do debates. Come on, let's talk. Just message me, shoot me a message on Discord, shoot me a message on Twitter, and I'd love to be able to talk to you, okay? I think it'd be very fun. We could have a great, if you love discussion, if you love the dialogue, if you love the conversation, hit me up. I'd love to be able to speak to you. I think it would be a really good conversation for all of us. So that's where I sit on that. I just think it's really unfortunate. And you know what? This is made it the case that I'm just, I guess I'll stay away from the stand-up comedy scene. I guess I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. I've made it 22 years thus far without hopping in, so I guess I'll just keep it going.